A dog with no name. A man with no way out. One trapped in a cold basement, tied and blindfolded. The other, a stray with broken paws and a memory of love long buried. No badge, no partner, no command, just instinct. When everyone else gave up on Deputy Cole Harris, a forgotten German shepherd did not. He heard the silence. He saw through the dark. What he did next will restore your faith in loyalty and second chances. If you believe no hero should ever be abandoned, man or dog, hit that subscribe button. What you're about to witness might just stay with you forever. The snow had fallen heavily the night before, burying the edge of Red Hollow, Montana, beneath a thick white silence. The air was brittle, sharp with ice and the scent of pine. The sun, just beginning to rise, barely broke through the iron-cold clouds. It was early January, the kind of morning when even the wind seemed tired, too frozen to howl. At the town's northern outskirts, past the railroad tracks and the broken fencing of what once had been a logging supply yard, stood an abandoned warehouse, 3 stories tall, its red bricks flaking from years of weather and neglect. Windows were shattered or boarded up with warped plywood, and a chain-link fence, half-collapsed, warned off trespassers with rusted no-entry signs. Through this ghostly landscape padded a figure that didn't belong. A German shepherd, ribs visible beneath his patchy coat, moved with cautious determination. His name, once etched on a collar now long gone, was Ranger, though the world hadn't called him anything in over a year. About 7 years old, Ranger had once been a certified search and rescue dog, trained to find lost hikers in the mountains and survivors in rubble. His thick coat, now weather-beaten and caked with snow, had once gleamed black and tan. His right ear bore a small notch, a scar from a rockfall during a rescue drill years ago. His eyes, amber-ringed and alert, still held the intelligence and discipline of the soldier he used to be. But war wasn't what broke him. It was loss. He'd been with Officer Sarah Grady, a tall, sharp-eyed woman with sun-browned skin and a voice like gravel softened by kindness. Sarah had been his partner, his handler, his home. When she died in an apartment fire, trapped during an evacuation gone wrong, something in Ranger shattered. He'd tried to pull her from the burning beams until his paws bled, but the fire claimed her. When the department took him in, something inside him refused to stay. One night, he slipped away into the woods and never came back. Now, living off scraps and instinct, Ranger was just another stray ghost in the outskirts of town. That morning, something caught him. A sound, a whimper. Not from a fox, squirrel, or wounded deer. No, this was human. Low, weak, desperate. He stopped, head cocked. It came again, muffled by wood and snow. Ranger's ears twitched. He stepped toward the warehouse, nose working furiously. The scent struck him hard, blood, sweat, and fear. Human. He crept along the side of the building, paws silent in the snow, until he found a crack in a basement window, barely big enough to breathe through. He pressed his snout against the glass, warm breath fogging it slightly. Inside, illuminated only by a flickering bulb strung from a frayed wire, was a scene that rooted Ranger in place. A man was tied to a chair in the center of a concrete room. His head drooped forward, a black cloth wrapped tightly around his eyes. His wrists were bound with rough cord, his knuckles scraped and bleeding. His badge was gone, but his uniform shirt was still intact, muddy, torn, but recognizable. This was Deputy Cole Harris, and Ranger knew it. Cole was 30, lean, and fit, with a closely cropped brown beard and short dark hair now matted with sweat. The town had plastered his photo across every pole and shop window for 3 days. Ranger had seen them. He hadn't understood the words, but he understood urgency. Scent never lies. The man inside smelled of pain, but also strength, something familiar, the same steadiness Sarah used to carry. Inside the room, Cole stirred. A faint moan escaped his lips. Ranger growled softly, instinct, not menace. Cole's head shot up. He couldn't see, but he heard it. Heard someone. His voice was rough. "Who's there?" he rasped. "Please help me." Ranger's paws scratched at the frosted glass. Cole froze. The growl came again, this time softer. "Dog," he whispered. "Is that? God, is that a dog?" In that instant, something changed in Ranger. The old training clicked into place. This wasn't just a man in pain. This was a rescue, a mission. He was the only one who could carry it out. He pawed again, harder, but the window didn't budge. The room was sealed, the walls too thick. The scent of blood and mildew curled in his nostrils. He couldn't get in, not yet. But he could remember. He could return. Footsteps. Ranger backed away from the glass. Inside, Cole tensed. The bulb flickered as shadows moved beyond the frame. The captor was coming back. Ranger melted into the shadows. Several blocks away, closer to the edge of Main Street, a woman exited a small metal building that read Bennett Animal Clinic in chipping blue paint. Lisa Bennett, 28, was short, pale-skinned, with a mess of strawberry blonde curls tied in a loose bun. Freckles dusted her nose, and her boots were scuffed with mud. Lisa had a calm, warm demeanor but a guarded look around her eyes, baggage left from years tending to animals people gave up on. She had grown up in Red Hollow, left for vet school, and returned after her father passed, inheriting the clinic and his habit of feeding strays behind the building. That morning, she carried a dish of kibble and a thermos cap of water. She placed it on a cement slab behind the clinic and whistled softly. "Come on, soldier," she murmured. "You've earned breakfast." To her surprise, the big German shepherd approached, limping slightly, eyes wary but fixed on her. She squatted low, offering space and patience. "You look like hell," she said gently. Ranger didn't eat right away. Instead, he dropped something at her feet. Lisa blinked. It was a mud-crusted shoe, torn, wet, and clearly used. As she picked it up, she froze. The leather bore a patch, an emblem, a silver star with a pine tree. She had seen this before. It was the standard issue duty boot for the Red Hollow Police Department, and someone had bled in it. Ranger took 2 steps back, eyes steady on hers. Then, without a sound, he turned and disappeared into the falling snow. Lisa stared at the shoe, heart pounding. She knew what she had to do. She reached for her phone. Lisa Bennett sat at her desk in the back of Bennett Animal Clinic, the fluorescent light overhead flickering with an irregular buzz that had been driving her mad for weeks. The smell of antiseptic and fur lingered in the air, but all she could focus on was the muddy boot now resting on a blue towel beside her keyboard. She had cleaned it just enough to make the logo legible, silver star, pine tree crest. It wasn't just any boot. It was Red Hollow Police Department issued. The faint traces of dried blood near the tongue and heel made her stomach twist. She clicked her laptop open and pulled up the local news stream. Snow continued to fall steadily outside, blanketing the small mountain town in a hushed white stillness. The video on the screen buffered, then played. There he was, Deputy Cole Harris, age 30, last seen on patrol 3 nights ago. Radio contact lost just before 11 p.m. No sign of struggle, no suspect, no vehicle, no body, just a good cop who vanished into the dark. Lisa's jaw clenched. She wasn't close to Cole, but she remembered him from town events. He was the kind of man who always greeted kids by name, the kind who returned lost dogs even after his shift ended. She remembered him crouching down once to hand a granola bar to a runaway stray behind the clinic, a German shepherd, no less, the same one she just fed. Her heart pounded as the connection hit her in full. The bell above the clinic door chimed as she grabbed her phone and dialed. The voice on the other end picked up in a low drawl. "Red Hollow PD, this is dispatch. This is Lisa Bennett from the vet clinic," she said, breath short. I think I have something. I found a police boot. One of yours. I think it might belong to Cole Harris. There was a pause. You sure it's not from one of the patrol guys? It's not. There's blood on it. And a dog brought it to me. A German Shepherd. No tags. Another pause. Then, stay where you are. We're sending someone. Within 20 minutes, the door opened again. A tall man entered, shaking snow off his brown sheriff's coat. His lined face was framed by a short white beard, and his expression was more tired than stern. Sheriff Mason Briggs, 62, had served Red Hollow longer than most people had lived there. Known for his quiet demeanor and stubborn instinct, he was the kind of man who believed in long pauses before decisions and in finishing a cup of black coffee before reacting to emergencies. He took off his gloves and looked down at the boot Lisa handed him. You said a dog brought this? Lisa nodded. German Shepherd, male, looked malnourished, old scar on his right ear, limped slightly, but he was focused, like he had a mission. Briggs grunted softly, turning the boot over. This is Cole's size. His name still marked on the inside lining. He looked up. Where exactly did the dog go? Lisa gestured toward the rear alley. North, toward the tree line and old lumberyard. Briggs exhaled slowly. That place hasn't seen a soul since the timber plant closed 12 years ago. Locals call it dead ground. I think that dog wants you to follow him, she said quietly. Briggs looked at her, then back at the boot. He nodded once. That afternoon, a meeting convened in the back office of the station. Officer Dean Stokes, late 40s, stocky and clean-shaven with a permanent scowl, leaned against the map of Red Hollow's north quadrant. He jabbed a finger at a shaded square. This is the warehouse compound. 3 buildings, partially collapsed, 0 active leases. Last patrol there was over 2 years ago. Across the table sat Sergeant Claire Durham, 34, lean and precise with close-cropped hair and a tactical mind honed in state police. She flipped through the forensics photos of Cole's locker. If someone took him and they're holding him close to town, that's the only place that doesn't show up on heat maps or traffic cams. Briggs entered the room, holding up the boot in a clear evidence bag. This was brought in by a stray this morning, covered in blood. Belongs to Cole. He let that settle before adding, dog led west from Lisa Bennett's clinic. Same direction as the lumberyard. Stokes frowned. A stray dog's our only lead? Briggs met his eyes. It's more than we had yesterday. Claire nodded. Then we work with it. Briggs tapped the map. We'll keep it quiet for now. No alerts, no news leaks. Just prep a search team for dawn. That's our window before the next front rolls in. That night, Lisa stood at the back of the clinic, snow crunching under her boots. She left a small dish of warmed stew and a fresh wool glove beside it. The wind cut through her jacket, and she hugged herself tight. Where are you, boy? She whispered. Far off, just beyond the frost-furred fence, a dark shape moved. 2 amber eyes blinked in the dark, then vanished. She smiled. Back at the warehouse, darkness reigned. Cole's head sagged forward. His limbs were numb from the cold, and rope burns stung his wrists. Every breath felt heavier. The room smelled of oil and damp wood. He didn't know how many days had passed, but he remembered the footsteps, the voice, the one who fed him barely enough to survive, who muttered about justice and punishment, and how men like you always lie. He heard the faintest scratch. Then again, near the wall. A low growl followed. He straightened, heart pounding. You came back, he whispered, eyes still blindfolded. I knew you would. The dog whined softly, and outside, a storm was building. The cold seeped through every crack of the concrete walls like an invisible tide rising through the bones. Deputy Cole Harris lay slumped forward in the chair, arms bound tight behind his back, the ropes biting into skin rubbed raw. A strip of cloth remained tied across his eyes, too tight to be accidental. The blindfold made the darkness feel deeper, like a second prison layered on top of the first. The room had no windows, only a flickering ceiling bulb that hummed faintly with electricity, its light barely reaching the floor. The air smelled of old wood, metal, rust, and damp cloth. But beneath that, something else lingered: sweat, oil, blood, and something faintly sweet, like the scent of pine mixed with fear. Cole stirred. His lips were chapped, his jaw sore. A part of him had stopped counting the hours or days. He wasn't sure anymore. The last memory he had before waking here was the sound of tires on gravel and the sudden violent jolt when something struck the side of his cruiser. Then pain, then black. A sound broke through the stillness. It was soft, too soft to be human, nails clicking lightly against concrete. Then a soft exhale, warm and close. Cole stiffened. "Is someone there?" he croaked, voice brittle from thirst. No answer, just a presence. Something close, watching. Then he felt it, a warm tongue against his wrist. Quick, careful, deliberate. Cole gasped and jerked in surprise. "Wait. Hey, dog." His words came out uncertain. He held still, heart hammering. The tongue came again, this time licking gently at the rope, as if testing it. Cole went completely still. He knew that kind of behavior. It wasn't wild. It wasn't panicked. This was training. This was deliberate. Another sound followed, the soft grind of claws against the cement as the dog repositioned. Cole felt fur brush his leg, and then something nudged the blindfold, teeth, soft but firm. They caught the edge of the cloth. The knot had been tied badly. Slowly, carefully, the pressure increased, and suddenly light, dim, pulsing, hazy light, but enough to make Cole recoil and squint. His vision burned with the sudden contrast, and everything swam for a moment. When his eyes finally adjusted, he saw him, a German shepherd. The dog was lean but powerful, his black and tan coat matted with mud and snow, the fur along his spine ragged from exposure. He had a visible limp in his rear leg, and his ears were nicked. His eyes, though, were alert and bright, a deep amber ringed with old sadness. He looked like he had seen too many winters alone. Cole choked back emotion. Where did you come from, boy?" The dog just stared at him, ears perked. Then he padded forward and sniffed the rope at Cole's feet. "Smart," Cole whispered. "You trying to help me out of this?" The shepherd didn't respond. He merely circled once, then sat beside Cole with military stillness, as if guarding him. Back at the Red Hollow Police Department, Sergeant Claire Durham stood in the tech room, staring at a paused video frame. She pointed at the screen. "There. Rewind 5 seconds. Officer Matt Reyes, the department's newest recruit, a 26-year-old with a wiry frame, dark-rimmed glasses, and a degree in digital forensics, tapped a few keys. He had a calm, precise demeanor, often quiet and less prompted, and spoke with a low, thoughtful cadence. "That's the shepherd again," he said. At the same time frame Lisa mentioned. "He's crossing County Road 12, carrying something." Claire leaned in. "Can you zoom in?" The grainy image adjusted. In the shepherd's mouth dangled a single boot, clear tread, dark leather, blood along the collar. "That's Cole's," she murmured. Reyes tapped the timestamp. This was 4:47 a.m. yesterday, roughly 90 minutes before Lisa Bennett reported it. Claire crossed her arms. So, the dog found Cole first. Briggs entered the room at that moment, snow still clinging to his shoulders. "What are we looking at?" Claire pointed. "Evidence. That dog's not just scavenging. He's leading us." Briggs studied the screen, then looked at the wall map. That intersection's a mile southeast of the old lumber compound. Matches her story. Reyes said, I dug into archived K9 files. There was a shepherd that fits the physical description, former search and rescue. Name was Ranger, partnered with Officer Sarah Grady before she died 2 years ago. Briggs tilted his head. That the dog that went missing after the fire? Reyes nodded. Records say he ran off during the funeral week. Never seen again. Claire added, if that's him, he didn't forget how to save people. Briggs looked back at the monitor. Prep a drone unit. If he's out there again tonight, I want eyes. Meanwhile, back at the warehouse, Ranger stood, ears twitching. He had heard something, a vibration in the floor, a creak above. Someone was coming. Cole stiffened. What is it? He whispered. Ranger let out a low growl and moved toward the door. His body lowered into a defensive crouch, hackles raised. Cole's heart pounded. You should go, he murmured. Get out of here before he sees you. But Ranger didn't move. He stayed. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Then a scraping sound, a metal latch being slid, then silence. Cole barely breathed, but the door didn't open. Whoever it was, they had changed their mind for now. At the edge of town, Lisa returned to the back of the clinic, checking the food bowl she'd left. Empty. She smiled faintly, then noticed something new in the snow, a paw print and, beside it, a drop of blood. Her smile faded. She turned and walked quickly back inside. The flickering light bulb swung gently overhead, casting dancing shadows on the damp concrete walls. Deputy Cole Harris blinked hard against the dim illumination, pupils adjusting slowly after hours, maybe days, of forced darkness. The rough cloth that had blinded him now lay slack around his neck, gnawed through with quiet determination by the dog who now sat directly in front of him, upright and alert. The German shepherd's eyes were a deep, soulful brown, ringed in amber and heavy with memory. They didn't flinch, didn't search for approval. They simply watched, loyal, steady. Ranger had chosen him. For a moment, Cole forgot the ropes burning into his wrists, the ache in his back, the numbness in his legs. All he could focus on was the dog's presence, how familiar it felt, despite never having met him. He let out a long, shaky breath. Thank you, he whispered, voice dry and hoarse. You got me seeing again. Ranger tilted his head, ears twitching. Then he moved. With sudden urgency, the dog padded toward the door of the basement chamber and let out a low, sharp bark. Then another, louder, echoing down the cement hallway beyond. His tail stood stiff, every muscle tense. He was calling for help. Cole sat up straighter in the chair. You trying to call someone? He asked, voice trembling with new hope. Smart boy. Keep doing it. Ranger barked again, the sound resonating off the walls. At the Red Hollow Police Department, Lisa Bennett stood in the narrow hallway outside the tech office, her coat damp from melted snow. She held a thick manila folder in her arms and a soft frown on her face. When Sergeant Claire Durham stepped out to greet her, Lisa handed over the file. I dug through my old records, Lisa said. Eddie photos, notes, intake forms. This is everything I had on a dog that matches your stray, black and tan shepherd, male, about 7 years old, trained responses, left ear scar, minor hip imbalance in the right rear leg. I used to treat a dog just like him. Name was Ranger. Claire scanned the documents, nodding slowly. We've had him identified through K9 records. He was assigned to Officer Sarah Grady's unit 2 years ago. Lisa exhaled. I remember Sarah. She brought him in once after a wildfire deployment. Said he saved a child stuck under a collapsed shed. He wasn't just a good dog. He was surgical. Claire's expression softened. She died in that apartment collapse, right?" Lisa nodded. "He disappeared the day of her funeral. Just vanished." At that moment, Officer Matt Reyes poked his head out from the tech room. "Got something." Motion sensor from drone feed picked up activity near the southern corner of the lumberyard. Shepherd-sized shape moving east to west, stopping near a basement vent. He pulled up a grainy thermal image showing a warm-bodied silhouette alongside a much larger cold structure. Claire turned to Lisa. "Your dog might have just led us to Cole." Lisa felt her chest tighten. "Then don't waste time." Back in the warehouse, Cole flinched at the sound of footsteps above. Ranger stopped barking and lowered his body into a crouch near the stairwell, ears flattened. The heavy footfalls slowed. 1, 2, then silence. Cole whispered, "That's him, isn't it?" Ranger didn't make a sound, but his stiff posture and tight eyes confirmed it. The door didn't open. Instead, a sharp bang rang out from deeper in the building, metal against concrete. A signal? A warning? Cole couldn't tell. Ranger stepped away from the stairs and returned to Cole's side. He sat again, touching his nose briefly to Cole's bound hands, as if to say, "Hold on." Meanwhile, in the command office at Red Hollow PD, Sheriff Mason Briggs leaned over the map of the lumberyard, glasses slipping down his nose. His weathered hands hovered above the grid of paper. "This compound has 4 main structures," he said. "One of them collapsed in '09, the basement's still stable, barely. If the dog's hanging around that spot, that's where we start." Claire tapped a red mark near the loading dock. "We deploy here. Quiet approach, no sirens. We want Cole alive." Briggs grunted. "Then we better move before that storm front does." The door creaked open behind them, and Deputy Aaron Leach stepped inside. Mid-30s, red-bearded, and solidly built, known for being cautious but meticulous. "Teams assembled and ready," he said. "We've got drone eyes, 2 K9s, and thermal scope kits." Briggs nodded. "Let's go get our man." Outside, the wind had picked up. A gray wall of snow rolled over the mountains like an invading army. In the basement, Ranger whimpered low and sharp, nervous energy vibrating through his body. Cole leaned his head back against the wall. His voice cracked. "You're not just any stray, are you?" Ranger looked at him. Cole smiled, faint but real. "You were trained for this. For people like me. You picked me." The dog licked his hand. Cole felt something rise in his chest, hope, fragile and sharp. He closed his eyes and waited. Wind screamed against the rusted aluminum siding of the abandoned lumber warehouse, slicing through every cracked window and loose shutter. Snow danced in sharp spirals across the half-buried loading docks as evening light began to fade behind the fir-covered hills of Red Hollow. The town below was quiet, Christmas lights still hung from gutters, flickering weakly through the storm. But up here, in the forgotten quarter, only shadows moved. In the concrete basement, the bulb overhead swung slightly, reacting to distant footsteps, slow, deliberate, weighted with intent. Cole Harris, still tied and sore, lifted his head slightly. His eyes narrowed as he caught the rhythm of the boots overhead. He'd heard them before. The captor was coming back. Ranger crouched low in the corner, tucked behind a rusted metal shelving unit. His tan and black coat blended with the dusty shadows, and his breath came low and slow. Every hair along his spine was raised. The scent that had entered the building minutes earlier was one he knew by now, pungent with rage, sweat, and stale cigarette smoke. The smell of something wrong. The door opened with a long groan. Ray Morton, late 50s, heavy-set with hunched shoulders and deep-set eyes, stepped inside, holding a flashlight and a tray of food. His jeans were oil-stained, and his flannel coat frayed at the sleeves. He had a disheveled beard and thinning black hair slicked back. A long scar ran down his left jawline, an old injury from his security days. Once a night guard at a mental health facility, Ray had a history: assault, unstable behavior, and multiple accounts of threatening behavior toward coworkers. His dismissal had come after a breakdown, but he'd faded into the outskirts of Red Hollow, living in trailers, taking odd jobs, and collecting strange grievances. Now he stood in front of Cole, eyes scanning his face with unreadable intensity. "You sleeping?" Ray asked, setting the tray down. "Bet you're hungry, deputy." "I've been generous, haven't I?" Cole said nothing. His throat burned, and he knew better than to provoke. Ray's eyes narrowed. "You were always smiling on your patrols. Like you was better than us. Like you knew something we didn't. Now look who's blind and tied." He leaned in close. "You know why you're here?" Cole didn't answer. Ray huffed. "You're here because you enforce their rules, not truth, not justice. You forgot people like me existed." In the corner, Ranger shifted slightly. His body trembled, not with fear, but with restraint. His amber eyes locked on Ray's belt, where a box cutter hung in a leather pouch. Ray stood again, walking slowly around Cole. "Funny how folks forget the quiet ones. But I never forget." He circled toward the back of the room, muttering something under his breath. That's when Ranger moved. Silent as vapor, he crept along the far wall, placing each paw with surgical care. Ray didn't see him. Outside, the snowstorm had eased to a soft flurry, though clouds still bruised the sky. Just beyond the fence perimeter of the lumberyard, two unmarked SUVs idled with lights off. Inside, Sheriff Mason Briggs crouched over a handheld tablet, watching thermal feedback from the drone unit. His brow was furrowed beneath his wool-lined cap, breath visible in the cold air. To his left stood Sergeant Claire Durham, bundled in tactical gear, a short-barreled rifle slung across her chest. Her boots were silent on the frozen ground, and her gaze never left the building. "We've got movement in the basement again," she said. "Warm body just entered, larger build, likely male." Briggs nodded. "That's him." Deputy Aaron Leach, red-bearded and calm under pressure, stood further back, directing officers with hand signals. "East access door is still sealed," he reported. "But we found a trail, boot prints and paw prints coming from the slope by the old loading ramp. Dog and man. Could be our Stray and Cole." Briggs adjusted his radio. "Team Alpha holds. We go on my mark. No gunfire unless fired upon. We want Cole breathing." Claire's voice was steel. "Copy that." Inside the warehouse, Ray was talking again. "This place," he said, waving a hand toward the mold-stained ceiling, "used to be full of men like me. Hard work, quiet nights. Nobody cared. Then they shut it down. Sent us home with nothing but a pat on the back. You know who didn't lose their job?" He leaned in close again. "You. You're kind." Ranger stepped one paw forward. Cole, watching from the edge of his vision, whispered under his breath, "Not yet. Not yet." Ray turned. His eyes landed on the dog. He froze. "What the?" Ranger stood completely still. Ray's face twisted. "You again?" Cole's breath caught. Ray stepped forward slowly, reaching toward his belt. "I thought I saw you last night." Ranger's lips peeled back just enough to reveal teeth. Ray growled. "You bring someone with you, Mutt, huh? Someone out there with a badge?" Then came the bark, one loud, commanding. It echoed through the building, and with it, voices outside, "Police. Come out with your hands where we can see them." Ray spun around, panic lighting his features. "No, no, no, no." He grabbed Cole's collar, jerking him sideways, but Ranger was already airborne. He struck Ray full in the chest, teeth aimed not to maim, but to disarm. The two crashed to the floor. The box cutter clattered out of Ray's reach. Cole tumbled sideways, heart racing. Ranger growled low, standing over Ray's chest. Then the door slammed open, flashlight beams slicing through the room. "Freeze!" Claire's voice cut through the air like a blade. Briggs followed her in, weapon drawn. Leach rushed to Cole and started untying him. "We got you, deputy. You're safe now." Cole blinked hard. "The dog. He brought you." Briggs looked at Ranger, still standing guard over Ray, whose arms now lay limp at his sides. "Good boy," he murmured. The scent of antiseptic hung thick in the air, mingling with the sterile brightness of the hospital room. It was quiet, save for the beeping of machines and the occasional crackle of the overhead speaker announcing visiting hours. Cole Harris stirred under the thin blanket, his right arm bandaged at the wrist and 4 lines running from the crook of his elbow. The dull ache in his ribs reminded him of how close it had come, how close everything had come to ending in that cold, rotting basement. But more than the bruises or the hunger, it was the silence that rang loudest now, the silence left behind by the absence of the dog who had saved his life. A knock came at the door, followed by the creak of it opening. Sheriff Mason Briggs entered, snow still caught in the creases of his long brown coat. His weathered face bore the lines of another sleepless night, and his gray eyes carried something softer than usual as he approached the bed. He was followed by Sergeant Claire Durham, her posture as straight and composed as always, though the tightness around her mouth suggested lingering adrenaline. "Morning, Deputy," Briggs said, pulling a chair closer. "How you feeling?" Cole pushed himself upright slightly. "Like I went 10 rounds with a wood chipper." Claire smiled faintly. "Good. Means you're still yourself." "Ray?" Cole asked, already guessing the answer. "In custody," Briggs replied. "He's not talking much, but we've started piecing things together." Cole mentioned, he said something about someone. "Said he bought a replacement." "He wasn't acting alone." Claire nodded. "He mentioned a man in a white van. Said the man promised him a child who could replace Jessica." "Jessica?" Cole asked. "His daughter," Briggs answered. "Died 3 years ago in a car crash. Lost his wife the same day. Looks like he never came back from that." Claire added, "He's not stable enough to be our mastermind. If someone else really handed you over, we're dealing with something bigger." Cole let that sink in. Then, after a pause, "And the dog?" Briggs shook his head. "Gone. Our guys saw him bolting toward the woods just as we got you out. Disappeared before we could tag him." Claire looked at Cole. "You said he was trained." "More than trained," Cole said. "He knew how to flank, when to stay low. He watched for commands even when I couldn't give them. He was a pro." Briggs exchanged a glance with Claire. "That fits with what we learned from Lisa Bennett." Cole raised an eyebrow. "The vet?" Claire nodded. "She brought in medical records this week. Old ones. She used to treat a K-9 named Ranger. Belonged to Officer Sarah Grady." "Sarah Grady?" Cole whispered. "I remember her. She died in the building collapse 2 years ago. Ranger disappeared after her funeral," Briggs said. "No one's seen him since. Until now." Cole leaned back, the truth settling heavily into his chest. Then he didn't just survive. He remembered who he was. Across town, the windows of Lisa Bennett's small cabin fogged with the steam of a boiling kettle. The place was warm, cluttered, lived in, books stacked along low shelves, a wool blanket draped over a threadbare couch. At the foot of it sat a blood-stained fleece pad, folded with care. Lisa knelt beside it now, gently scrubbing the dried smear of red with a wet cloth. She didn't cry, Lisa wasn't the crying kind, but her movements were slow and reverent. Ranger had lain here once, just 2 nights before, bringing the boot to her. She remembered the way he had watched her, not like a stray, but like someone who understood the space he entered. He hadn't begged. He'd waited. A voice called from the other room. "Hey, Lisa." It was Danny Fairlane, her neighbor and longtime friend, 40s, bearded with a wiry frame and soft eyes, often seen in grease-streaked overalls from his auto repair shop. He stepped into the living room, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You okay?" he asked, setting one down beside her. She nodded. "I'm fine. Just thinking about the dog." Lisa looked up. "He's not just a dog, Danny. His name was Ranger. He was K9. Saved that deputy's life." Danny sat beside her. "Then where is he now?" She didn't answer at first. "Then, out there. Watching, healing, waiting for someone to come find him." Danny sipped his tea. "Then we will." At the Red Hollow station, the interview room was lit by a single bulb above a scratched metal table. Ray Morton sat in a gray t-shirt, staring down at his hands, unmoving. His eyes were glazed, half-lidded, expression flat. Claire Durham sat opposite him, her notebook open but untouched. "You said someone brought the deputy to you," she said. "Who? What was his name?" Ray didn't respond. "Was it the man in the white van?" she prompted. "You mentioned him." Ray blinked slowly. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, "He said he could fix it." "Give me another Jessica." Said the ones nobody missed were the best ones, like strays. Claire stiffened. "What does that mean?" Ray looked up at her for the first time, a broken smile on his face. "They're all just strays. Nobody misses them if they don't bark." Outside the room, Briggs turned away from the one-way mirror. "Get a photo lineup on missing children, any unsolved abductions from the last 5 years in the Tri-County area." Officer Matt Reyes, standing nearby, nodded. "Already started, Sheriff." Briggs's voice dropped. "And tell the FBI. This is bigger than we thought." That night, under the heavy silence of the forest, a figure moved through the trees. Ranger walked slowly, favoring one paw, eyes scanning the ridgeline. He was tired. He was hurt, but he was alive. He came to a stop near the ridge above Red Hollow and lay down on a flat stone. He looked back once toward the valley, where the town glowed soft orange in the night, and closed his eyes. For now, his mission was done, but he would not be forgotten. The morning light over Red Hollow carried the heavy stillness of winter. Inside the sheriff's office, the atmosphere was tense with movement. Files lay open on every desk, the whiteboards filled with scribbled names and blurry license plates. In the center of the briefing room, Sheriff Mason Briggs stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his lined face tight with focus. The recent statements from Ray Morton, disturbing in both content and implication, had cracked open something far larger than one man's madness. And now they had to follow the shadow it left behind. Ray wasn't acting alone, Claire Durham said, pointing at a series of overlapping circles on the projector screen. Her tone was clinical, crisp. He received instructions from a burner phone registered out of state. Signal pings show contact near a decommissioned scout camp west of the highway, off-grid for years. Easy to conceal vehicles. Beside her, Agent Mike Hanley, mid-40s, clean-cut with close-cropped gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, nodded. Hanley had arrived from the FBI's missing persons unit the night before. His suit jacket never seemed to wrinkle, and his steel-blue eyes missed nothing. Our intel cross-referenced similar cases, same MO, victims marked as invisible, runaways, addicts, isolated residents, or people like Cole. This isn't random. Briggs frowned, rubbing the side of his jaw. And the van? Confirmed sighting near Cold Pine Scout Camp 3 nights ago, Hanley replied. Trail cam showed it parked along the tree line. Driver not identified, face covered, vehicle registered under a fake ID. Do we have probable cause for surveillance? Hanley's response was simple. We already started. Elsewhere in Red Hollow, Lisa Bennett crouched at the edge of the woods behind her clinic. She wore a heavy plaid coat, gloves too big for her fingers, and snow-stained jeans. Her expression was intent as she pinned another scrap of flannel to the branch of a low fir tree. It fluttered faintly in the breeze. A few feet away, Danny Farrelane, wind-burned, bundled in layers of oil-stained canvas, unpacked a sealed container of cooked chicken into a shallow tin dish. "This the last one?" he asked. Lisa nodded. "It's the trail he took before. I think his memory still holds." Danny gave a sideways smile. "He's a dog, Lisa. You're talking like he's a ranger for real." She didn't look up. "He is." They worked in silence, lining the route from the woods back toward the edge of town. Lisa had mapped it based on the direction Ranger had vanished after the rescue. She'd marked it with cloth strips scented with lavender oil and tiny pieces of the shirt Cole had been wearing, familiar smells tied to safety. The vet in her knew animals ran from trauma. But the part of her that had once buried her own dog knew some came back if given reason to believe they were wanted. As they reached the last bend in the trail, Danny paused, lifting his hand. "Lisa," he whispered. She turned. A figure stood at the tree line. Ranger. His coat was muddier now, his body leaner, ribs pressing slightly under his skin, but his eyes, sharp, amber, steady, met hers and did not waver. Lisa dropped to a knee. "Ranger," she whispered. He didn't run. She held still. Ranger took one cautious step forward, then another. Then he was running, and moments later, he was in her arms. That afternoon, back at the sheriff's office, Ranger sat quietly in a corner of the conference room, a fleece blanket beneath him. He didn't wear a collar, his eyes moved slowly, watching each person without fear, just alert understanding. Lisa sat beside him, hands folded in her lap. Across the table, Briggs, Claire, Agent Hanley, and Officer Reyes reviewed documentation. "Microchip match," Reyes said, pushing forward a digital scan. "Registered as K9RG17, call name Ranger, deployed under Officer Sarah Grady, deemed MIA 2 years ago." Claire looked toward the dog. "And somehow he never forgot who he was." Hanley added, "Dogs like this don't revert easily. They either break or keep going." Briggs leaned back in his chair. "He didn't just keep going. He brought one of ours home." Lisa reached out and gently rested her hand on Ranger's back. He didn't flinch. "That's why I'm asking to keep him for now," she said. "At least until you decide what happens next." Briggs nodded. "Done. But I want him accessible. He's not just a witness. He might be our best lead." Later that evening, Cole Harris walked up the steps of Lisa's porch, still in his hospital clothes, a fleece-lined jacket over his shoulders. He moved slowly, favoring his left leg, but there was a steadiness to him that hadn't been there before. Lisa met him at the door, ushering him inside. "He's in the back," she said. Cole stepped into the living room. Ranger lay near the fireplace, dozing. As Cole approached, the dog stirred, lifting his head. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Cole knelt, despite the strain. "Hey," he said softly. Ranger pushed himself up, padded forward, and rested his head against Cole's chest. Lisa watched from the hallway, her eyes warm but distant. She let them have their moment. When Cole finally stood again, he looked at her. "He remembers." "I know," she replied. They sat on the couch. Lisa pulled a blanket over her knees. "Did I ever tell you I had a dog once?" she said after a pause. "When I was 19. Lab mix. Smart, sweet, saved my life in a fire, but the smoke took him. I think I never stopped looking for him in every animal I treated after that. But Ranger, he feels different, like something came back." Cole nodded. Maybe he's not just here to help me. Maybe he's here to finish what Sarah started. Neither of them spoke for a while. Outside, the snow began to fall again. But inside, for once, the silence didn't feel cold. The sun crested over the pines of Red Hollow with a brilliance that seemed almost ceremonial, burning the frost from rooftops and setting the windows of the sheriff's office aglow. Inside, a quiet urgency buzzed through the hallways. Agent Mike Hanley stood at the center of the operations room, one hand resting on the edge of the map-covered table. "It's happening today," he said, voice low but steady. "Coordinates locked. 2 hours before the handoff." Sheriff Briggs, grayer now than just weeks before, gave a sharp nod. "Everyone's briefed. No mistakes." In the corner, Ranger sat alert, ears pricked, gaze fixed on the projection of the wooded scout camp where the white van had last been spotted. Though the dog made no sound, his presence felt like a heartbeat in the room, calm but electric. Beside him, Cole Harris, still in recovery but upright, rested his hand lightly on Ranger's back. "He's ready," Cole said quietly. The road into Cold Pines was cloaked in silence. Snow muffled tires and footsteps alike. The FBI tactical team, clad in charcoal gear, moved like shadows between the trees. They weren't the only ones. Ranger led them, nose to the ground, navigating scent trails invisible to the human eye. Behind him, Cole walked with measured steps, his breath ghosting in the air. Though still on leave, he'd been granted special approval to accompany the team. Ranger had responded only to him in training simulations, and no handler could replace what had been forged in that warehouse days ago. The team reached a clearing. Parked beneath a collapsed wooden structure was the white van. Hanley raised a fist. The team halted. Cole crouched beside Ranger, who was tense, tail stiff, head tilted, ears twitching at sounds Cole couldn't hear. Then, with a soft growl, Ranger moved forward, weaving behind crates, pausing only to check the air. A door creaked. A man stepped out of the van, tall, wiry, his face obscured by a ski mask. He carried a clipboard in one hand, his other shoved deep in his coat pocket. As he moved toward a stack of pallets, another figure emerged, shorter, broader, clearly armed. Hanley's voice crackled softly over the radio. "Hold." But Ranger suddenly veered left toward the back of the van. He stopped at the rear door and barked once, sharp and deliberate. Cole's blood ran cold. That bark wasn't an alert. It was a warning. Hanley gave the signal. The team surged forward. The taller man spun, dropped the clipboard, and reached for his waistband, but he was too slow. Within seconds, both suspects were disarmed, cuffed, and face down in the snow. Hanley yanked open the back doors of the van. Inside, curled in opposite corners, were 2 children, a girl and a boy, no older than 9, their wrists zip-tied, faces pale but conscious. The boy whimpered. The girl just stared, wide-eyed, until Ranger leapt into the van, lay between them, and licked the boy's cheek. The tension cracked. The girl sobbed. The boy reached out, trembling, and touched Ranger's fur. The news broke within hours. Helicopters circled Red Hollow. The rescue footage, grainy, trembling, real, showed Ranger climbing from the van, children clinging to his neck, and agents streaming in behind. National anchors spoke his name like it was a legend. But back in town, things moved quieter. Cole sat beside Sheriff Briggs on the station steps, watching as Lisa arrived in her pickup. She wore a dark green parka, her auburn hair braided back, a subtle smile tugging at her lips. In the passenger seat, a tote of dog blankets and a cooler of food. Ranger trotted out to meet her and sniffed the tote approvingly. "He likes salmon," she teased. "Now you tell me," Cole replied, rising to greet her. Briggs stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Lisa Bennett, on behalf of Red Hollow and the state of Oregon, Thank you for your contribution to the safe return of Ranger and the identification of multiple victims. Lisa gave a modest nod. I just fed a stray. Briggs shook his head. No, you fed a soldier. That weekend, in the grassy lot behind the sheriff's office, a small platform had been set. Folding chairs arranged in neat rows. The wind was cold, but the sun stayed bright. It was not a formal event, but the people of Red Hollow came anyway: shopkeepers, students, firefighters, old women with wool scarves and war medals. At center stage stood a new badge, not a metal one for a man, but a collar tag engraved with the K9 seal. It read, Ranger, Red Hollow Sentinel. Cole stepped forward in full uniform for the first time since his return. Though his stride still carried a limp, his spine was straight. He knelt before Ranger and, with steady hands, affixed the tag to the dog's collar. Do you accept the call to serve again? He said softly, more ritual than question. Ranger barked once. Applause broke out. From the crowd, Lisa wiped her cheek and said under her breath, That's my boy. In the months that followed, Ranger walked every beat beside Cole. He wore his vest again, this time without scars beneath it. Children in town waved when they saw him, locals left dog treats by the station door. When the night shift grew long and the woods grew cold, Ranger didn't flinch. He was back, not as a stray, not as a ghost of a lost partner, but as a guardian with a new vow. Lisa opened the Second Chance Project, a training program for stray dogs with potential, many pulled from shelters or rescued from abuse. Ranger was the face of the program. Every Saturday, Cole brought him to the field for demonstrations, and the kids came running. They called him the Sentinel now, not just for what he'd done, but for what he still stood watch over. Sometimes, God doesn't send angels with wings. He sends them with fur, 4 paws, and a heart that refuses to give up. Ranger was once lost, a forgotten soul wandering through darkness. But even in the shadows, God lit a path. That path led him not only to save others but to be saved himself. His journey reminds us that no matter how broken we are never beyond redemption. There is a purpose waiting, even for those the world has turned away. In your own life, never underestimate what kindness, patience, and faith can awaken. You may not wear a badge, but your love might be the very miracle someone else is praying for. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Comment Amen below if you believe every soul, human or animal, deserves a second chance. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories of grace, courage, and the silent guardians walking among us. May God bless you and protect those you hold dear.